Now in flexbox, the children, the flex items, may actually decide to not follow the layout from the flex container. In other words, you can override your basic layout that you define in the container for each of the items in it. Now recall the align items property for flex containers. You had the 5 different values flex start, flex end, center, stretch and baseline to define the positioning along the cross axis for the main container. Now you can override this for each of the items using a property called align self. Now align self basically allows you to use the same 5 values, so you already know all the values you can use, like stretch here for example. But now we're gonna run into a little problem here because as you can see, item 2 that I used here still looks the exact same way as before. And that's because we still have align content set here and we have 2 rows in our container and they will all be aligned towards the start of the main axis because of flex start. And then the rows basically are very limited in their height they can use. So if we just remove this, then each of the 2 rows has more of a freedom, so to say. And then item 2 can also stretch to take up the remaining height. Now similarly, we could go to item 5 here and just try out align self, flex end here. And then you can see it's gonna align itself towards the end of the cross axis as you would expect. So this way you can override whatever you set as align items for the flex container, and you can use this to make some of your flex items stand out from the rest by having a somewhat different layout or maybe just having more space in general. Now with this, I very much encourage you again to go to Flexbox Froggy and do the next 2 levels, 16 and 17, just to get used to this and try it out for yourself to actually get some practice, because otherwise you won't really remember all the properties you can use. Now for these 2 levels, you're actually also gonna have to recall flex rep that you learned before. You can recap the previous lessons. You can also, of course, take a look at the showcase. And as always, if you have any questions or you can't just seem to figure out one of the levels, just ask me in the Q&A and I will get back to you. Alright, so in the next couple lectures, we're going to move on to properties that define the sizing and the responsive behavior of the flex items, which is not covered anymore by Flexbox Froggy, but is maybe the most essential part of Flexbox. So we're gonna dig a bit deeper there, maybe spend a little bit more time because there's also more to understand compared to these properties here, but I'm sure you'll be able to follow along. And of course, you can still always ask me in the discussions. Alright, that's all for this lecture. I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.